All right, I'm gonna try to show both ways that we do the wingtip. This will be the first way, will just be with regular tape. I take a piece, I'm gonna use 3" because it goes up past it, probably 3/4 of an inch on both sides. So what you wanna do is just get you the very outside mark all the way wherever you're gonna have this go. I'm gonna go all the way up to the front and around to the trailing edge. And you wanna get an outside center mark, just like that. And then you want to take the iron wherever the last piece has folded over. You want to take an iron and get that completely smooth. Once you get that smooth, I'm gonna use 3 on this, and this is regular tape. Go in and center that. Mark it just outside your tape line, about every 6 inches. Because the reason, you can just put glue around that, but like I've said before, with Airtech, you have to keep inside the marks because we don't use any kind of glue brush, any kind of poly brush, anything. You clean this with 40-20 and your primer is gonna go directly into the fabric. And if you start letting a bunch of glue get out of line, that fills the weave with glue, and then your primer stands on top and you have a bunch of sanding involved. So I go all the way around, just like that. And once you're all the way around, now you can build all kind of tools and stuff. Really, I'm just looking vertically down on this, and I can hold my fingers right to the edge and just kind of connect, readjust and connect. I'm just wanting to get kind of a glue line. And at that point, you'll put 2 coats of the thin mixed glue on this. Since we're not going to wet it, or we may do it a little different on this regular tape and not bias tape, you might go ahead with 3 coats to get a good glue base down. And that's the first part of using this. All right, now that we've got 2 to 3 good coats of thin glue, we had used a piece of 3" and did a center mark and measured around and got a rough mark all the way around to get us a line. With Airtech, this is dry, but it will activate when you hit it with more wet glue. I've made it up to right here. I just take the thin glue and just reactivate the very outside. Now you can do it through the fabric like this, but it just tends to work better on some of these situations, wetting the end of it and then pulling your tape and just eyeball the center and just pull it a little bit. And then you're rubbing on a dry side. You're not getting glue all over you, and you're just tacking it down like that. Go all the way around. Now we've got this end that's up. If you just try to fold this over, it will glue down for a little bit, but because of the curve, you're going to get puckers. I'll show a video where you can take a playing card and put under it and take an iron, and what you're doing is you're lightly shrinking it as you go around. Now you can also take an iron, I'll show when this dries, and you just kind of work the iron that way, and as you work up, Airtech glue will reactivate with heat, but then you'll come back over the top with more thin glue. And then on the other one, I'll probably just go ahead and do this with the regular tape. The only difference in bias is if you mark this and you get a mark here and you pull the bias around here, a lot of times you go all the way around. And I think I've already have a video on one of the Fabric Tip Fridays of Brian pulling that. And as you pull it, because bias tape is cut, we're like this fabric, instead of cut this away, it's cut out of a 45. So the runs of fiber only go from about right here to about right here. So they actually can close in on each other. And if you keep pulling it, this tape will get to 2.5 and 2.25. It'll get narrow and it'll be off of your line. So you don't want to pull it too hard. And when you pull it around like that, it actually starts to tuck in. And when you take a brush, bias just does this magic little thing that then puckers like that. The fabric just kind of forms itself in and works really well around in corners. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue these ends, and then I'll show how I take an iron with regular tape and do this. All right, I've got it tacked all the way around the outside, and what I did was I took my brush and just reached in behind and wetted a little bit and folded like 1 inch over, skipped up just a little bit, did the same thing. And what I did was just kind of have some flat spots. It's just one way I'm going to show you. That way you're not chasing a bunch of wrinkle all up. You kind of got it in little sections just to work with. I know there is 50 different ways that people do this, and they're all right. It's just a matter of getting that reinforcement around the end of the hard point and onto the solid point. But this is one way, just tacking it every 6 inches, and that way, if you didn't tack it down and you started with an iron, you know, you don't know if you're just doing a big flat area down and got a real high wrinkle here or whatever. By doing this, you're just working a couple sections at a time. And what I do, set the iron at about 300. And one way you can do it, I've nobody out here to hold the camera. You can take like a playing card or business card and lay behind it and put the heat against that, because you know it will activate and stick to this raw glue under here. And if you push it down too quick, it may be a wrinkle that you're going to have to work out and stuck down. What you're trying to do is just lightly shrink this to take this part out and lay down flat. But if you go too hard with it, you can shrink this back off of your line. You'll make this actually shrink back a little short. Won't be the end of the world, but then you'll have your line showing. There's several ways. Sometimes I can just start right out here at the edge, and that way I know that I've got it all flat and there's no wrinkle, because the biggest wrinkle is going to be all the way back here. And I'm just kind of sticking it down into that glue, and as I'm working, the heat of the front of that iron that's not touching the fabric yet is getting a little slow heat to it, a little bit of slow heat to it, and it's starting to slowly take up that slack. And then at one point when it's almost flat, then you can just go in and take it right up to the front. Now you can see where it come back off the line there about 1/8 of an inch, and that's not the end of the world, but it's, you know, I pushed that a little bit fast going around that. But that way you just working a section at a time. You can put a playing card behind that to take it. It don't take much. There's not, but maybe if you laid that out, there's probably not a 1/4 inch extra length right there making that raise up that high. On the biased tape, when you're in this position, you can actually just take the brush and start doing that, and it'll just disappear with the bias tape. Now remember, on the bias tape, there's a sewn seam about every 7 foot or something. You'll want to just cut that out and start fresh, because that big old angled seam is going to show up on your plane. So that's kind of the way I finish out the tips. Like I said, there's several ways you can pull it and use an iron, but you're just trying to do that compound curve is all you're trying to do. And I've got this one set up with some bias just to show what it does. If you've been using regular tapes, you know that when you see them wrinkles, they're not going to go away. See how the bias just folds in on itself. It just works. You just work them right out to the end. This big area right here, all those wrinkles, you just kind of wet it. The fibers kind of work in and fold in on themselves. Close the gaps up, and it's just a little more expensive, but I believe it'll save you so much time. I like using it just because it saves time, and you don't have to monkey with other stuff. You got the purist that says they'd never use it, and that's fine. But you know, when you're trying to knock one out and doing as many planes as we do around here, anything that you can help the customer save time on, you'll do it. So that's kind of the way the bias works. One thing about the bias, when you're putting it in the center, when you pull it, I've got a video I think on it that Brian did, like I said, but when you pull it, it actually folds over on itself. But if you keep pulling it, it'll keep getting narrower and narrower, so you have to kind of play with it.